So when we talk about circles, we have specific parts of the circle that we want to look at. This is the center. All things start from the center of the circle, and we have two different types of lines that jut from the center. We have a line that goes from the center to the edge. What do we call this? The radius. You will see radius denoted with an R. And then we also have from edge through the center to the other edge. This is called the diameter. All right, and we denote diameter with a D. So in your video last night, we talked about circumference and the dragon of pi. And so we are going to focus first on circumference of circles, and then we will do area. Circumference is the distance around the circle, right? And that is what we're going to focus on. So let's do a couple of definitions here. A diameter is a straight line that passes through the center. It has two endpoints on the circle. Okay, so the key is that it goes through the center and its endpoints are on the circle, because when you get into high school geometry, you're going to learn that a line can go from edge to edge, but not necessarily through the center. That has a different name. A radius is the distance from the center of the circle to the outside edge. All right, so that's just words going with our picture here. So now let's talk about the relationship between the radius and the diameter. A diameter, if you notice, this would be a radius and this is a radius. So our diameter is made up by 2 times the radius, or 2r. Remember, when we show multiplication of a number and a letter, coefficient first, letter second. So if that's the relationship, so if the diameter is 2 radii, what is the relationship between the radius and the diameter? If you are given a diameter, how are you going to find the radius? We're going to half it, right? We're going to take the diameter and cut it in half, or diameter over 2. So an example might be, if I have a radius that is 6 centimeters long, how long would our diameter be? Well, it would be what? 12. So we could say D equals 12 centimeters. Okay, it's that simple. Okay, that is not on your formula chart. You should know that one though. Okay, any questions so far? I did not run these front to back so that you can cut around these edges and you can put this in your journal. Okay, so let's talk specifically about circumference. We talked about the individual pieces of the circle. Let's talk about what we can do with that. So again, the circumference is the distance around the outside of a circle. So if you look at the word circumference, okay, it is your whole circle. It's just the outside. It takes about, this is what you learned in your video last night, a little more than 3 diameters to make the circumference. So we can say the circumference is about 3 times the diameter. So we could even write that as C is up. Notice I use the squiggle equals. That means about, right? 3D. the diameter, what if I wanted to go backwards? How would I find the diameter? I would take what? C and do what? Divide by 3. So the diameter is about 1/3 of the circumference, right? So we could say D equals circumference over 3, right? Therefore, the ratio of the circumference to the diameter, so how would we write that? Remember, order matters, C over D, because circumference is written first, and ratio is a fraction, is what? What do we know? What did you learn about C over D is what? 3.14, also known as pi. So C over D equals pi. The approximation for pi, we can say pi is approximately 3.14. You can also say pi is exactly 22 over 7. And we're going to talk about when to use 3.14 and when to use 22 over 7. So we have two formulas that we can use for circumference. If you're looking at this and this, we can replace 3 with what? Pi. So we can say circumference is pi times d. So we can also say 3.14d. And we can also say 2 times pi times r. Because how did we get the diameter? 2 times r is the diameter, right? So we're just substituting that. So we could also say 2 times 3.14 times r. There are specific instances where you will need to use 22 over 7, okay? Versus 3.14. And we're actually going to visit that in just a minute. So let's look at an example. I'm going to actually zoom in so you can see my box is a little bit bigger. All right. This says, what is the circumference of a circle with a diameter of 14? Well, the first thing we should always do is label our picture. Okay, we always want to label our picture. The second thing we want to do is write our formula. So we have a diameter. We talked about 2 different formulas here. Do we want to use the one with the D or the one with the R? The one with the D, because that's what we were given, right? So we can write our formula. C equals pi d. Now, we can plug numbers in. So this is the tricky part. I'm going to go back. We said pi is 22 over 7, right? Let's make a little note up here where we wrote that. We're going to put a special star. And this is, we only use 22 over 7 if the denominator is a multiple of 7. Because we learned when we multiplied fractions that you can cross-reduce or cross-cancel. So if we have 7 on the bottom and my diameter is a multiple of 7, that's going to cancel out really nicely. Okay? So that's what I want you to look at. Look at 14 here. Is that a multiple of 7? Yeah. So are we using 3.14 or are we going to use 22 over 7? Watch how pretty this looks. C equals 22 over 7 times, what was my diameter? 14. I can make that a fraction by putting it over 1. Look how nice this is. Look at your diagonal. Can we cross reduce here? How many 7s are in 7? 1. How many 7s are in 14? 2. Okay, so look. Top times top, what's 22 times 2? 44 over 1 times 1 is 1. Look how pretty that is. Okay, so this is our actual answer. Okay, 44. We don't have any units. Okay? If we wrote our answer in terms of pi, this is going to be something we also visit. Terms of pi means that you're going to leave the pi symbol. Okay? So what was my diameter? 14, and we did it times pi. So we would just write, don't overthink this, 14 pi. Okay? Because that was exactly what we did. Our estimated answer is going to be when we use 3.14 as an approximation for pi. Okay? But we don't want to have an estimated answer if this is a multiple of 7. Okay? So we're not, I mean, you could do 3.14 times 14, and you can use your calculator. And we get 43.96. But you need to make sure you're doing a squiggle equals. Okay? So do you see the different representations we could have? And we're going to continue to talk about those different representations. Shall we try another? All right. On this next one, it gives us the circumference. What is the circumference if the radius is 8? What do we know? If the radius is 8, what does that mean for us? Diameter is times 2. So which of these formulas do we want to use? Pi d or 2 pi r? 2 pi r. And these are on your formula chart, which I will give you tomorrow. So we can write C equals 2 times pi times r. And now we can plug in what we know. Well, what are we going to use for pi here? Why? Why are we using 3.14? Because 8 is not a multiple of 7. So we can plug this in, and you can use your calculator. You can say 3.14 times 16, 50.24. Is that my answer in terms of pi, my estimated answer, or my actual answer? This is really because we're estimating pi at 3.14, 50.24 units. What would we write in terms of pi? Well, we would write the same thing. We would just put the pi symbol here, right? We would say 2 times pi times 8. Well, what's 2 times 8? So what's my answer? 16 pi. We can't actually, we could do our actual answer if, because in there, did you know there's a pi button in the calculator? There is. So we could do this. We could say 2 times, and look, if you go way down here to the bottom by the H, there's a pi. And if you click that, you get these options. So we want to hit enter for pi. And then we say times 8. So notice how this is slightly different because we rounded here. So we could call it 50.27. But because this is not a multiple of 7, really the actual answer we're not going to have one. All of ours are going to be estimated. Okay? All right, so now we have some we do, you do's. We're going to do the we do's together, and then I'm going to give you some time to do the you do's. So notice this one is on a grid. It's asking us for the circumference, but there's a problem. We don't have any other information. Notice the scale. Is this counting by ones? No, it's counting by what? No, it's not counting by 16. It's counting by 8. So this, we're going to have to count by 8s, right? So 8, we're going to have to count the diameter, or we can count the radius, either one. So 8, so we know we're going to do times 8. So let's just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So my diameter is 9 times 8, which is 72. Does everyone see how we got that? What formula do we want to use? Pi d or 2 pi r? Pi d. What would be our answer in terms of pi? 72 pi. Good. That's all we need to do, right? 72 pi units. Can we write an actual answer? Is 72 a multiple of 7? No, but we can do an estimated answer. We can say 3.14 times 72. Aren't you glad you have a calculator? 3.14 times 72. Oh my goodness. 226.08. And look, we're going to do that squiggle equals to be correct. 226 and 800ths. We can't actually do an actual answer because this is not a multiple of 7. In a minute, you're going to do this one. Not yet, though. Let's look at this other we do. Can you fill in this information? Remember, how do we go from diameter to radius? So we can say the diameter is 2 times the radius, and the radius is the diameter divided by 2. So what would be the radius here? 10. What would be the diameter here? Careful. 9. Can we find the circumference? Circumference is what? Pi d, right? So we can say pi, these are not multiples of 7, pi times 20. We can say pi times 9. Use your calculator. Make life easy on yourself. 60, oh, don't forget your squiggle equals. 62.8 and 28.26. Oh, that's what we need to figure out, right? If I have the circumference, let's look at this. So now I'm saying 31.4 equals pi times d. Well, if I need to get d by itself, I need to what? Divide it by pi, which is what are we going to approximate it at? So 31.4 divided by 3.14 is what? 10. And that is my diameter. Do you see that? So if my diameter is 10, what is my radius? 5. So I would like for you to try the two we do or you do problems, which is this one, you do B and you do A. Let's try that and we'll come back.